How to share your story with confidence and impact. I'm always amazed to see people with great stories that can change people's lives, but who are insecure when it comes to sharing them. Many people have great stories. In fact, as I'm helping people turning their stories into an instrument of impact and a source of income, into a powerful business, I noticed that most people have difficulties understanding that there is value in their life experience, there is value in their stories, and that ignorance causes most of them to feel insecure when it comes to share their story. And today in this session, I want to help you understand why or how you should build that confidence that will give you that boldness to share your story, because you know that your story will change the lives of those who are listening to you or watching your video. That is very important. And many times I had the opportunity to witness the power or the transformative power of stories. For example, I remember many times when I shared the story of my spouse and I, how it was impossible for us to have children, and how by the grace of God we were able, after 3.5 years, to finally got our first child. And I remember that after sharing that story, because when we got married, it was impossible for us to have children. It was a difficult time in our marriage, because we wanted to have babies. We wanted to be able to raise children. We wanted to have children, and it was difficult not being able to have one. And not just that, what made the situation worse was the fact that even some of our friends were belittling us, telling that it seems like we have done something wrong in the past, and today God cursed us because we are wicked. We are wicked people. And it was difficult to see that it was difficult for us, it was impossible for us to have children, because we went to see doctors, we went to many hospitals, and it was impossible. And not just that situation was difficult, but hearing that some of your friends and relatives are using the situation you are going through to destroy your image, to destroy your reputation, it was quite difficult to handle, difficult to bear. And I remember that we started just praying and having faith in God and praying, God, that you are the one who can make the impossible. Now we are looking at you to change that situation. And I remember that after 3.5 years, after a Sunday service, my wife started not feeling right, and we decided to go to the hospital. And I remember when we went to the hospital, she got into the office to see the doctor, and I was in the waiting room. And after some minutes, she got outside. I remember her eyes was so open, like someone who saw something strange, and I was a little bit afraid. And I asked her, what's going on here? She told me that they are saying that I am pregnant. And as I was processing what I just heard from her, because it was surreal, it was unreal, it was something that I couldn't believe. So I was trying to process what I just heard, and as I was processing that information, the nurse who was coming behind her screamed at me, "Hey, mister, I want to tell you, congratulations. You have to start celebrating, because your wife will have a baby and you will be able to raise a beautiful child." My friend, that day, our life completely changed. When we got back and announced the news or shared the news with our loved ones and some of our friends, I could see in the eyes of those who were mocking at us and belittling us, using that bad situation to destroy our reputation. I could see in their eyes the, the I don't know how you call it in English. I could see their eyes, the shame. They were ashamed because what was happening was contrary to what they were telling people about us. God had mercy on us, and by His grace, we were able to have a child. And today we have 4 children by His grace. And I remember many times when I shared that story, I have many people who come to me and say that I was inspired by your story. Many people are inspired to believe, inspired to believe that there is a hope, inspired to believe that if the situation they are going through right now is a little bit difficult, it can change. Many of them are inspired because they are saying to themselves, if God did it for me and my spouse, it can do the same for them. And I have many experiences like that. When I share my story, whether on stage, whether one-to-one, whether in a conversation, to witness how people's lives are transformed under my eyes. I can see how their expression change. I can see how their mood change. I can see them with opening their eyes with such an expectation. I can see hope in their eyes. I can see confidence in their eyes. I can see inspiration in their eyes. Stories are very powerful. There is no such thing as a bad story if you know how to tell your story. And I want you to understand that your story is something very important, and the confidence you are looking for, or the boldness you are looking for to share that impactful story, will come from the knowledge you have about the power of your story. Because when you understand that your story has a power to transform other people's lives, it will give you that boldness and that confidence, because you know that what you are sharing is needed and it will transform other people's lives. I want to share with you 3 things I want you to remember, and every time you will remember them, it will give you the confidence you are looking for or you are lacking. It will give you that boldness. First thing I want you to understand is this: no one can discuss your story. Or how can I say it? No one can oppose your story. Many people feel insecure to share their story because they think that people will argue with their stories. But I want to tell you, your story is your story. No one can change that. No science data can change that. Your story is your story. Even if they have data which contradict what you went through and what you have experienced, that doesn't change the fact that what you went through was a fact, was true. Your story cannot be opposed by any scientist, because your story is something that you have experienced. It's not about science, it's just about sharing what you have experienced. Many people one day I was sharing this story with someone, and the other person who were listening to us said to me that is not true. You are lying, because according to science, if the doctor says that it's impossible for you to have a baby, you cannot have a baby. And I told him that I'm not against science, but what I'm sharing with you is my story. And you cannot change what I have experienced. Yes, there is science, but there is also my story. My story is what I have experienced. When I went through to see doctors, you were not with me. When I went from one hospital to another, you were not with me. When they said to us that it was impossible for us to have children, you were not with us. When we started praying and crying to God to help us, when we put our faith in God to help us because we read in the Bible that he was able to give us this capacity to have children, you were not with us. And when we got that good news of being able to have a baby, and now we have 3, 4 children, you were not with us. That is my story. And when I told him that, I closed his mouth. I said, there is no problem with that. I have no problem with science, but my story is my story. You cannot change that. There is no doctor who can change that. There is no scientist who can change that. There is no science data who can change what I have experienced. And when you understand that, you can share your story with boldness. Even you can share it even to someone who is who is doubtful about what you have been through. But the fact remains the same. Your story is a fact. You have experienced that. You have went through that situation. You have experienced that breakthrough, and no one can take it from you. And do you know what happened when I said to that person? I said, I spoke like this to that person. The person I was sharing my story in the first place was inspired, and she said to that person, "He's right. That is his story." And I could see in her eyes, because it was a lady, that she was inspired, that she was motivated, that she got a lot of value from my story, because my story helps people understand that there is a possibility. There is a possibility to experience breakthrough, even if people, experts, and scientists have told you that it's impossible. If you put your faith in God, God can change your situation. That is the message. So when you understand that your story is your story and no one can oppose your story, whether he is a scientist or a doctor or an expert or whatever, because science data cannot contradict what you went through and what you have experienced. In fact, what you went through is a fact. So when you have that knowledge, it gives you that confidence and that boldness to share your story, because you know that even if there are people who will be doubtful, there will be people who will believe, because they will see in your story the inspiration they were looking for their own situation. The second thing I want you to remember every time that will give you confidence and boldness to share your story is that your story is someone else's glory. You can write it down. Your story is someone else's glory. There are people who are waiting for your story to get the keys that they were looking for to turn their situation around. There are people who are stuck right now. There are people who are praying right now. There are people who are discouraged right now. There are people who don't know what to do right now. But what they are looking for, the answer to their situation, the key that will help them turn their situation around, it will be found in your story. Only your story. When you understand that, it gives you boldness. When I share this story of how it was impossible for my spouse and I to have babies, to have children, and how God was faithful to us to give us 4 children today, one day I was sharing it with a lady, and I didn't know that that lady was a spouse of a minister. At the end, when I was about to go, she ran me down and she gave me money. And I told her, "Why are you giving me that money, this money?" She told me that because your story healed me. I needed to hear your story. Now let me tell you this. She's a spouse minister. She's in church every day. She's supposed to have faith to see her situation turned around by God. But she needed, despite all the stories that are in the Bible, all the stories that she used to listen in their congregation, she told me that she needed my story to get healed. That is so powerful to understand. Your story is someone else's glory. Only your story. And when you know that, and because I know that, I can share my story with boldness. Even if I have difficulties expressing myself in English, I don't care. My level of proficiency in English will improve. But I cannot wait to share my story. Even if I have difficulties expressing myself in English fluently, but I have this boldness to share my story because I know that there are people who need the hope that comes from my story, the inspiration that comes from my story, the key that will help them turn their situation around. So your story is someone else's glory. The third thing I want you to understand is that stories are more impactful than facts. Stories are more impactful than facts. I've coached a lady who is today is a wellness coach, and what got her the breakthrough she was looking for was a story of mine that I shared with her about how I went from being the poorest singer in my band to be the best singer. How I went through that transformation. And when I shared with them my story, she got a breakthrough. And she used that breakthrough to launch a wellness coaching business today, because stories are more impactful than facts. And when you understand how to incorporate your stories in your presentation, it will increase not just your impact but also your income. That is very powerful. And I want you to remember those three things. I want you to remember that no one can oppose your story with science data, because your story is your life experience and no science data can contradict that. Second, I want you to understand that your story is someone else's glory. That someone is out there right now waiting for your story to give him keys that will help him turn his or her situation around for good. And the last thing is that, and I want you to remember that stories are more impactful than facts. Studies have showed that stories are more impactful than facts. And I hope that these three things, these three information, these three nuggets I'm sharing with you, I want you to remember them every time you have to speak to people. You have to step on a stage to make a presentation, to understand that there is power in your story and you should share it every time you have the opportunity, because your story is someone else's glory. That is what I wanted to share with you. If you want me to help you, because I help people create what I call story-based offer. I help people look in their life experience stories that are impactful and turn those stories into powerful offers, irresistible offers that will help them make more impact and more income. If you want me to help you with that, just go in the description section and contact us by clicking on the link in the description section, and I will have a session with you, and I will see if your aspiration fit with our values and how we want to work with people. And if it's okay, I will help you. I will gladly help you turn your story into your business. I hope you've got a lot of value from this. It was Zoe from Cameroon, and I wish you success.